This episode of Living Well with Rentwell, we have founders of the company on. It's myself and Mr. TJ Hock. And we are demystifying the questions that most commonly come up from one of the types of clients that we get quite a bit, which are the bigger pockets community. So we have offices in both Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and there's a lot of people in bigger pockets around the world, and there's a lot that reach out to us from those two markets. So we figured, why don't we just jump on here, record the answers to the most common questions that we get asked. So TJ's going to ask me the question. I'm going to do my best to be succinct with the answers. We've been in business now managing other people's real estate since 2009. We manage a little over 1,500 doors, so we're not a small mom and pop, but we're not some behemoth where you're just a number and just stuff slips through the cracks and it's just can become chaos at those sizes. We are what we feel to be in a sweet spot. We're fully staffed. We're what's called a vertically integrated asset management company. So that's a fancy word for we have our management company, we have our service company, which has actual W-2 employees, and then we have our investment division. And I think this year, TJ, you and I, our investment division will become the largest client of Rentwell with over 100 rental units.
100 rental units, yeah. Yeah, which is
exciting.
That was, and I would even say that we've been very purposeful about where the offices are located and coming back to like focusing on core operations and not having 100 market centers across the country providing okay service.
Yeah.
You know, we're very focused right now. It's the state of Pennsylvania. It's kind of like the book Small Giants. If any of you out there have read that book, it's purposefully remaining, maybe I'll put in air quotes, smaller, but providing incredible service and not being seen as your commodity property management business. You know, like what can we do different? What can we do better? We like to think of ourselves as the Zappos of property management. So how can we provide wow service? How can we be different? And I'm really excited to be on here with this. I think this is the first time that you and I have actually done a show together.
It's our first one, my friend. And you raised some great points. At one time, we had 7 offices in, I think it was 4 or 5 states, and we sold them all to solid operators. So we took those books of business and we sold them to other operators that were more niche in those markets, and we honed in and doubled down. We kept our same corporate staff, and we doubled down on our existing 2 markets, which is Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. And now our efficiencies are much greater because we're only dealing with one state. We're only in 2 markets. There's, 20 sub-markets, which in each of those markets. And what we've also done is say, look, we're not student housing. Like, that's not our niche. We'll find another property manager to refer to. And we have a spectrum of about 9 different asset classes within just the residential space. So that's really where our bread and butter is the single family, the smaller multifamily. We do a little bit with mixed use, and it's 99% where people live, where they call it home, whether it's an efficiency at 300 square feet or it's a 6,000 square foot executive rental. Like, that's our niche. That's our sweet spot. That's a lot of what we own. Mm-hmm. And
that's
Little Giants.
On Bigger Pockets, we're asked pretty often, well, what do you manage, right? What is the asset type? Do you do multifamily? Do you get into student rental? Are you just single family? So maybe we could answer that question, which you kind of already did, but the question is, what type of assets do you manage?
Yes. So a lot of single family and hundreds of clients that have one rental property. It could be an inheritance. It could be relocating and I need my home managed. The home that I used to live in, I'm moving, and I need to find a firm that can handle that firm well. So yes, that's bread and butter to us. We know it very well. And we also handle the multifamily size that is less than the size where it's going to make a better financial investment to have an on-site manager like full-time.
Mm-hmm.
So TJ and I own, the largest building that we own is 13 apartments. 2 of those apartments are Airbnbs that we run to increase our returns. And some of those are A apartments, like fully renovated vault ceilings and all. And then we have some C's still in that building that have yet to be renovated. So it's where people live. It's singles. You'll hear the term row homes a lot, which is common in the Northeast. I know it's very common in Philadelphia. We handle condos. So the unit inside of an HOA or inside of a condominium association, we manage a lot of those. And those are really our niches and what we drill down in. And then we have clients that might have 50 single family houses that we manage, or they might have 5 duplexes, and we handle it for them.
Which kind of ties into the next question. Our favorite question: what do you charge?
What do you charge? Okay. So we're going to demystify property management fees in another episode. I could talk for an hour about property management fees. So what we charge is hopefully enough money to run a successful and profitable business for ourselves, to provide the landlords and the tenant base with what they're looking for, the promise that they have in that lease. So the property management fees used to be pretty cut and dry, 10% across the board. And then everybody got real fancy and started to lower the fees and charge other fees. Right. And if anybody wants to reach out, I actually had to develop a calculator when I am working with a potential client and they're trying to compare ours versus somebody else's, to demystify what everybody else is charging. So we have something called the Rentwell One Rate. And what we can do is quote our client a fixed price per month that includes tenant placement, lease renewals, maintenance coordination, and then all of the functions that go into the ongoing property management, like posting late notices, answering questions about the lease, answering questions about the ledger, and of course all of the rent collection and the accounting and reporting. So that's something called our Rentwell One Rate. On average, a single family home that rents for up to $2,000 a month is $195 a month on that program. Then other programs, right? Like that program may not make sense if you have a duplex and the rents are $1,000 a month each. So we can quote the Rentwell One Rate, and then we can also quote the percentage rate and say what is included in that rate and what is not included in that rate. So there's a fixed rate, the Rentwell One Rate, and then there's a percentage based. Okay, then the third and final program is our new BOSS program, where we found that some landlords want us to collect the rent and handle all the accounting and all the reporting. They want us to be the front line so they can go on vacation and their tenants would call our property manager or go into our portal with any maintenance request. And then we diagnose the maintenance request over the phone or over the computer or over text message where they're front line. And then we distill that information down to the client. And then the client would then assign their own maintenance tech. The client would post their own late notice if somebody fell behind, and the client would find their own tenant. So that's our lowest fee. That could be around 6%. Right, of the rent, and we will be the front line. They remain the boss. We call that our BOSS program.
Love it. We're excited to offer that feature now. BOSS stands for Back Office Support Services, in case anybody's wondering how we came up with that. So, Rob, that ties into the next question, which is, can I do my own maintenance? We get asked a lot, if I own the property and I hire a property management company, I may have my own list of vendors, or maybe home warranty. I kind of like to do my own maintenance. Will you allow me to do my own maintenance, or at least will you use the vendors that I prefer to use if I work with you?
Right. The short answer is we prefer that you don't. We want to be in control. You really have to earn your trust with us that you can handle it in the proper way. Shorter answer is, if you wanted to handle the big maintenance turns and the big CapEx projects on your rental while it's vacant, we understand that. We can handle those for you. But other than that, we need to ensure that vendors are licensed and insured, that we have the right tax ID to be able to 1099 them at the end of the year, that all of their people are covered. We also need to ensure the amount of communication and photos before, during, and after that they take. So we have our own preferred vendors. We also have our own sister company with about a dozen W-2 that do swing the hammer, install the smoke detectors, clear the sewer lines, and do that work.
Yep.
And TJ, with you running operations, I'd love for you to add anything else and put any other color on this.
Yeah, well, I like what you said about the photography, right? Because part of our standard, when we're in control 100% of maintenance, in our vendor agreement, they certainly have to have the vendor has to have the right licensing if required, proper coverage for insurance, and before and after photos, right? And then that all goes into our software, where we wait to pay a vendor until we actually have the photos. And I could give so many different examples of how that has saved us as a management company, or our clients, the property owners, from any potential lawsuits of this person didn't show up, or they didn't do that, or they broke this, or it's photographic evidence.
Yes.
And we also have our reserve with our clients, right? So typically anything under $500, we take care of. If it's over that, we seek owner's approval.
Mm-hmm.
And we have found before that if we use other vendors, they're just not as familiar with that process. And then, here's that surprise bill that we weren't expecting to get.
Right.
And so I would say the same thing. If an owner did have a vendor they preferred to use, we would still put them through our system. They would still have to complete the application process. They would still go through that. And one of our metrics for the maintenance team, for when it comes to daily maintenance, and for us, daily maintenance is a tenant submitted a work order for a leaky sink, or a myriad of different examples. We like to have that work order closed, and we track this. That work order closed in 5 business days or less.
Okay.
Because then that's when reviews can come online. Job didn't get done. It sat around for a while. And so that's why we prefer to use our own vendors.
Right. Now, what's nice is the owner, we can flip a switch and basically inform the owner when maintenance is coming up. And we have dedicated, so the way our business is set up is that every property is assigned a property manager. Some companies, nobody's assigned to any one property. It's just, it's maintenance, call that person. Oh, you have a vacancy, call that person. Oh, there's a move out, call a different person. And it's very frustrating towards the client. We've studied this over the years. It is more profitable to run a management company that way, but it's better service to run it what we call the portfolio way. So right now, every property has a property manager. They manage our own rental properties, right? As they do hundreds of other clients for thousands of other units. They can learn which owners want to be involved in different facets. So for instance, what we don't want to do is draw this line in the sand and say, you have a new roof that has a warranty? Nope, sorry, we're not going to send out the vendor that no, absolutely. If you bought the appliance from Lowe's and it's still under warranty, we don't need to send out our tech. We are frugal as investors and as property managers. So you have to have the give and take. You have to live in the gray area a bit. If you've had the same oil furnace that's been serviced for 20 years by the same firm, okay, We just need to make sure that that firm is set up, or you handle, Mr. Client, the annual service, but you have to let us know so we can let the tenant know and handle those types of things. So I'd like to believe that our system is flexible enough where an owner can get the advantage of their own quote unquote vendors, but then it is scalable enough and has the right level of detail that we can remain in they're in ultimate control, but we can execute upon a plan and a promise for their rental property so they can get back to investing, living their life. Nobody wants to own rental properties for the sake of owning rental properties. It doesn't make any sense. Why would you want to own something that you're not, a house you're not going to live in? You want it for the shirt behind me. You want it for a level of freedom, is really ultimately what you're after. Financial freedom, inner freedom, that like that's a whole nother topic that we could get into. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question on how maintenance is handled. Vertically integrated for us means that we also have grass crews, snow crews, HVAC techs, master carpenter mechanics, full-time electrician, and many times our rates are as competitive with the market, sometimes better, sometimes not as better. So that's the other thing that we have to contend with is what vendor are we sending out to what work order? And you can only imagine how chaotic it would be to start managing other folks that aren't within our network. And, they go by the beat of their own drum. Doesn't work out too well.
So this ties into another question, which I get excited about, and I'll take the first response at it, but it's how often are you at my property? So you're the property manager. How do I know that you're going to have eyes on it?
Yes.
To keep me updated. So we did, and the answer would be, this came out of an owner survey. I believe it was for 2019. So every year we send our clients a survey, and typically it's the same type of question so we can track progress. And one of the questions was, if we were to provide additional services, what might that look like? And the number one piece of feedback at that time was more eyes on the properties, more visits. So out of that, we launched what's called the field manager, the field support role, 2 different roles. Mm-hmm. And basically they spend 95% of their day driving around and visiting properties. So we will do a pre-move-in. So this is right before the tenant moves in. We're documenting the condition of the property. And this looks like video. So we'll go in, we have a particular process we follow for taking videos. And then we do an email recap, which goes out to the owner, goes out to the staff.
Right.
Then we have a post move in. So about 3 months after the tenant moves in, we're doing the same thing. And this is really the time where we're looking for, is there any evidence where maybe there's pets in the property, but the lease doesn't give any indication of a pet? Or does it seem like maybe there's more occupants? Like we've seen beds put up in basements, and it just brings the question, well, something's happening here. We found that by the time a resident moves in, typically 3 months into that, that's exactly how they're going to keep the property. That's how they're going to live. Like they're comfortable at that point.
Right.
So we visit 3 months after post move-in. And then we do about 4 months prior to the lease expiring, we'll do another visit. So we call it the lease renewal visit. And this is to get eyes, again, in the field. The resident may be paying on time every month, and from a financial perspective, they look great. Well, how are they keeping the property? Yeah. And this is also our time to post what's called a cure or quit. So if they're in breach of their lease, maybe not from a financial perspective, but it could be the way they're keeping the building or any damage that's there. That's our opportunity to post that and have them correct it, right? Because we have a fiduciary responsibility to our clients that we're helping them maintain the asset and their net worth. And so that's one step. And then we do the move out. And the move out inspection is your standard move out inspection. We'll go there, document it, take video, put a scope of work together. And the other one I didn't share was when we do sign up a new unit, we're typically out there doing what we call an initial evaluation. So we've signed up a new unit. We're walking through it. Again, we have a documented process for this. And really, we're looking for any kind of maybe life safety issues or future repairs that may have to be done. And So those are the typical. So typically we're at a property 4 times. Um, Depends on the lease term. We also will do any municipality mandated inspection or Section 8 inspections. So we're at the property pretty frequently, which I think is unique for our space, that I can say with confidence that we visit these properties very often.
Right. And this came up, TJ, we run our businesses on the EOS platform, thanks to you. And this came up as something that's unique, that we believe is unique about us, is that we have literally, since that survey, we reorganized our company. We bought a fleet of vehicles, and we hired the right profile that's comfortable going in to people's apartments and people's homes while they're occupied and while they're vacant. And I'll tell you what, there's so much that it catches. When you hear these horror stories, oh, and they were doing this and the property was that, the first thing I say is, when's the last time you were there? Oh, it's been years. Okay. What did you think was going to happen or not happen? And we get busy as landlords. We get busy. Tenants don't want us to just invite us in. You could end up as an hour-long conversation with some of them, right? Or you don't want to know about all the little maintenance stuff that's going on. So, yep, absolutely. What I love that is done is that videos and photos are taken, that's shared, right? Because in this portfolio based, the person that's out there is not that doing that's a full-time job. So it's somebody else that's processing that and following up from that information. It's all shared with the clients.
And that would be the property manager. In our model, that's the property manager who takes the information, shares it with the owner, and if any action items come out of that, they're following up with it.
I smile when I get them now. It just feels good. I love it. Here it is. We're ready to renew the lease, and here's what we're thinking.
Yeah. And even if everything's great, it's just nice as a landlord to see the report and know we were there, it's been documented. And that could be a whole nother episode of the things that we found by doing into the properties as often as we have.
Yep. Well, it's helping us out on a legal case where we're defending a landlord right now. What was found in those videos. And
that's true.
Yeah, you do something long enough. I mean, we're over a decade managing other people's real estate, helping them build wealth. You start to see how this becomes a trickle-down effect into other things you didn't need, that the benefits that you didn't even realize.
Okay, so next question is, what is your method for marketing to prospective tenants? How are you finding prospective tenants to walk through the property and apply? And I can take that one.
Yeah, I was going to be as simple as the best photography that we can get. That's usually a paid service, right? We also have our own Matterport cameras, so we do very, very detailed floor plans and put them out there, and we do a lot of paid marketing today through the Zillow platform.
Zillow.
And just make it look as nice as it can be, get by the best photography after you've done the right renovations, and then let everybody know about it, and then have ways to capture all of those leads, which is mostly an automated process with some manual oversight, right? And then have the way to eliminate as many of the candidates that wouldn't make sense, get the right people in there to tour the property, and then assess motivation and move on.
And high level, we syndicate to about 39 other sites, all the major Trulia, Zillow, Hotpads, and many more. What I'll share without getting into the weeds is that we just partnered with another company for the application process, which uses the latest AI technology to scan pay stubs. Does it seem like anything fraudulent is happening? I mean, there's literally people on Instagram and social media teaching you how to create fake pay stubs.
Yes.
And so I'm really excited. We just went live with this April 1st. And this is where, using AI, it has something like 3,000 data points that it looks for, and it will scan. And this system also will connect directly to their bank account, to the applicant's bank account. Yeah. So we can see what monies are in there. It ties to if the tenant works for, I'll just call it like a services type company, like Uber or Grubhub or Lyft. they have to put in their information, their login credentials, and it will get in there, and we will see, well, what have they actually gotten paid?
Got it.
What do they have in there? So it's because really I would say that in our space, third-party property management, the leasing side of the business, there's a lot of stuff happening out there in the world right now. And, what are we doing to help answer what's going on? And so I think this new process we're running, I'm super excited for.
Yeah, and you're bringing up something that is unique to us, where we're not a real estate brokerage with a little office over on the side with no windows. That's property management. We're not XYZ Realty and Management, right? Those are a dime a dozen, and they're a brokerage business that happens to do property management. The money's made on the brokerage side. Tenants are marketed to become homeowners.
Right.
So then you can get a leasing commission when you backfill the tenant, or you just move them around between, you churn them. And I don't think that the majority of non-dedicated property management companies, they're probably a few years behind on this if they ever end up adopting it. And how much tens of thousands of dollars could that cost? I mean, one bad tenant placement can easily be $15,000.
Yeah, we've seen it.
And it's a nightmare for everybody. Nobody wins. The tenant also doesn't win because they end up with an eviction on their record. I mean, I guess the same TikToker who's teaching people how to do this is probably going to have to come up with a course how to clean up your credit because you can't buy a car now because you were a moron and decided to fake your pay stubs. Like it's gonna come out. Okay, you beat a landlord for 2 months, hopefully not a third. But yeah, I'm glad you're implementing this type of technology. I saw it firsthand, these fake pay stubs, about 7 years ago in a town called Lansdowne. It was just I trusted my gut. I was there showing a property. It just didn't add up. The story that was told to me, and then when the stubs came over, and I could just see this isn't legit. And then you don't call the number that's on the stub that somebody gives you. You need to track it through Google and get the real number of the company. And that's a process that you can't really automate. And if AI can help with a lot of this, all day long, let's continue to be the company that stays on the cutting edge of this, and it'll be better for everybody involved.
I love it. Next question is, and you sort of touched on this before, the structure of the company. The question is, do I have a main contact that when I sign up with Rentwell, what does that look like?
Yeah. Well, I am actively signing up clients every day with Rentwell, and I let them know that they are assigned a property manager, and that property manager is their main point of contact. There's an onboarding call. So the property manager is supported by a whole team, and there's some key people on that onboarding call because there's a lot of information that gets built up before somebody decides to go with Rentwell if they haven't used us before. We grow a lot from just existing landlords buying more properties, which is great. So they know how our system works. But the answer is yes, they get a dedicated person.
And that dedicated person who's the property manager, they're supported by the leasing coordinator and some VAs there. They're also supported by the field manager and the field support. They're the guys out in the field visiting properties. They're supported by our corporate office, which does a lot of the financials, the repetitive, the money in, the money out.
Yep.
So they are also supported by a lot of other team members. That when you sign up with Rentwell, yes, you have one dedicated person. You also have a team of about 4 or 5 other individuals supporting your investment.
Right. And most of the communication, I would say, is really 3 things. So we're Rentwell: lease, manage, maintain. So the leasing is when there's a lot of communication, right? So we have a property. We bought it as a 3-bedroom, 1-bath. We converted it to a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. I looked at the subsidized housing rates in this zip code and was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that they're willing to pay this much for a 4-bedroom. Let's rent it. Let's open it up to both Section 8 and non, of course. And I wanted it rented like as soon as it's ready. Section 8 can sometimes take like 60 days to get their stuff together. So we showed the property while it was still under construction, near the end of construction. So I'm getting a weekly report now as to how many people were interested in the property and how many people showed the property and what the score was. That's automated. So I don't have to call anybody up and say, did we have any showings last week? I believe I get that report every Monday automatically. How many leads, how many showings, what was the feedback score? One of the feedback was, it's too dusty in there. Yep, that's correct. There was a period during construction that we decided to expose a brick wall. It got kind of dusty. Somebody showed up for one of the tours. Okay, I got that feedback from the property manager. They were involved. They're getting feedback and say, hey, is this a problem? Do we need to adjust our tours? Let us know. I talked to the foreman, and they could have done this directly if I would have put them in contact with each other. And we said, nah, we're good. But we'll let you know when the hardwood floors get refinished. So there's a leasing coordinator that's making sure that report's running. They've already found a qualified applicant. I'm like so happy right now, TJ. I didn't even share this with you yet, but they found an applicant. So we're only going to have that property is going to be done on April 15th of 2023. We will have a Section 8 move-in May 1st, 2023, on a property that we've been renovating for about 4 months.
That's incredible.
Full gut renovation. So now we have to pass some inspections, right? So we run a little bit of a risk, but again, back to that vertical integration, back to using our own vendors, because we do north of $5 million a year in construction, at maintenance, grass cutting, snow removal. So when we call a vendor and say we need something done, they are vying for an opportunity to get on our roster to work with us. We pay our bills. We're good to work with, right? We want to help them build their business. We have a lot more confidence that they're going to get it done in time than a landlord that has one property that's been shopping around, that doesn't know the lingo, that doesn't have a really well-defined scope of work. So I could tie all this in. It's nice to have the dedicated property manager, because otherwise something like that might get missed, like the floors getting sanded and the other. And this is now Section 8, which means that there's a little higher criteria needed on an inspection, so we can let field support know that for when they go out there. And there's a lot of moving parts to something as simple as doing a renovation and finding a tenant. And I'd like to believe that we've gotten pretty good at it over the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. So you had mentioned lease, manage, maintain.
Yep.
And one of the questions we get asked is, if a tenant does not pay rent, do you handle, I'll use in air quotes, the eviction? Right. So do you handle filing in court for judgment, and then the actual eviction, like ejecting the individual from the building? Do we handle that process?
Yes. Start to finish. Yes. Best thing you can do as a landlord is let us do our job.
Agreed.
Don't hit the pause button. Don't say, well, let's wait another week. If we say they haven't paid, it's time to file a landlord-tenant case. You can always pause them.
Yes.
You can always call up and say, you know what, just give it another week. Move the court date. Look, if somebody doesn't have 1 month rent, what's going to make them have 2 months rent? So this is on a state-by-state basis. Rent is due typically on the 1st. Typically, it's late after the 5th, and then there's usually in most states it's between 5, 7, 10 days where you can do the cure or quits, and then you can file the landlord 10 cases. A lot of the lingo is, when can eviction? You're not evicting them yet. You are filing a landlord tenant case. Some certain management companies are going to use attorneys, do it in-house or a hybrid. We do the same. And then you just need to have all your paperwork in a row. All those proverbial ducks need to be in a row and be very organized with the lease, who signed the lease, the tenant's ledger, and all that. And we coordinate that. I mean, TJ, we have clients that have never seen their property, let alone show up and post a notice themselves and go to court. Like literally, we'll get keys FedExed, or somebody from the settlement table will run them over to us, or we'll be there at the settlement table because we're helping them, build their portfolio that way. And they have that video, right? When we first onboard it,
Yep.
they have a scope of work of what's needed. Then after the tenant moves in, there's another video. And then 4 months before that tenant moves out, there's another video with stills. And many times, if you get used to watching the videos and pausing them right, you can actually pick up sometimes on more things. It's like the second best thing than to actually be there in person, but you don't need to get distracted with the stuff that's not important.
Right.
So,
yep. And with that, another question we get asked is, can I meet the tenants? Can I interact with the tenants?
I'm going to try not to have a real sarcastic response to that. No. Or let me not be arrogant and say, why would you want to? Mm-hmm. Tell me, you're hiring us to provide you peace of mind and freedom.
That's right.
And a lot of what we do is recurring tasks that are relatively simple, but that require a degree of skill to be able to handle fierce conversations. And the last thing we want to do is jeopardize your investment or your time or your peace and serenity by having the door opened up for that tenant to reach out to you directly. Now, if we're not doing our job and that tenant reaches out to you and needs to light a fire on that, that's a different story, right? And both TJ and myself are available, okay? Yes. So that's also why during onboarding, you get the general manager, there's a property manager, right? Property managers, if they don't last forever, people leave careers and move things around, and balls can get dropped. But for the most part, there's not a reason why a landlord would need to review an application. We will share a credit score. We will share criminal. Mm-hmm. Okay. We're not getting into names. We're not doing anything that could jeopardize anything with any type of fair housing. Okay. And we also tend to steer away from the properties where the owners are living at. I live downstairs and I want to rent upstairs. That can be really tricky. That can be tricky. We have those scenarios, and we will leverage our decade of experience to educate the landlord on what to say, what not to say. Their landlord's name is going to be on the lease because that's required. But for the most part, no. There's doesn't mean that we doesn't show a rent roll with all the tenants' names and who's late and who's not, and how many NSFs have there been, and what's the security deposit and what's the prepaid final. If a landlord wants to go above and beyond for a tenant, we offer the ability to do gifts annually to the tenants around the holidays, and that's a great way where we can offer some goodwill to the residents and say, here you go.
Yes. Yeah. And to your point, like at the most basic level, the reason it's a challenge is because then they kind of play that mommy daddy game, right. That if they don't like what the management company says, well, then I'll go to the owner and maybe then I can get what I want. And then it just opens up a can for a communication nightmare.
Yes.
Quite frankly. And do you have any questions that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Some ask, like, how quickly can we find a tenant? And it's pretty quick right now. I mean, there are not a lot of houses for sale. There are not a lot of properties for rent in our market. So the answer is, as quickly as that property will allow us, at the highest rent possible for the highest quality. So there's really a matrix, like a Venn diagram, if you will, of the amenities of the property. And then you add on there the highest quality photography, both in-person and self-showing features to allow the maximum amount of qualified prospects to tour the property, and then the right pricing structure. Right, it's not so much about maximizing the rent as much as it is to get the longer-term tenant for most of these asset classes. Mm-hmm. You make the most money by having the least amount of turnover on average. So that's also a factor in how we're pricing these rental properties. So that's usually a question that we get. I think, TG, you've rolled out a partnership with a firm that for some properties a landlord can get 1 year's rent in advance if that property and that tenant qualifies. Do you want to talk on that?
I would love to. Yes, which thanks for queuing that up. The one of the next questions I was going to bring up is, do you offer any guarantees?
Okay.
We get asked that pretty often. And because some management companies out there will have leasing guarantees or eviction guarantees. And so for us, we just rolled out a rent income guarantee, which basically there's 3 options there. For a qualified unit, you're eligible for all like 1 year's rent up front. And it's about 90% of what the rent would be. There are some fine print things there.
So do they get, what do they charge for that? 10% to give you 100%? To give you the rent?
Well, yeah, so they would give the management company all their management fees up front.
Okay.
And then they withhold about 1 month's worth of rent, this company that we use.
Okay.
For any unforeseen maintenance issues that may come up or bills that could come up. And then the landlord gets the remainder.
And how does that company make money?
So they make they make money on just other fees. Think of them like an insurance company. For them, they bill us, the management company, every month per unit.
Okay.
And we bill the owner. So they're making money. Think of it like insurance. There's not always going to be a claim against all the properties and rent. So they're taking that risk that there's going to be an offset from what they pay out versus what they're collecting.
Interesting.
So to the owner, it's $35 a month per unit for this program.
Okay.
We call it the owner benefit package. And so what that looks like for $35 per unit per month is rent up front for 12 months. It is up to 2 months of rental income. So if a tenant does not pay rent for any reason, they just may not have paid rent. They may have abruptly left. So an early termination of the lease, maybe they passed away or they were called out for military duty. It almost doesn't matter the reason. As long as they've stopped paying rent, you're eligible for up to 2 months worth of rent.
Okay.
And then if we do go through the eviction process, there's a third part, which they call the eviction shield. And you're eligible for up to $1,000 to help cover the legal expenses, which could be our time going to court or court fees and all that. So there's almost 3 layers of protection there. And then you also get a portal. So the owner would get a portal, any kind of legislative updates, bills that may be going through Congress or changes in fair housing, you will be updated live time as they happen. And then there's also a rental analysis. So you can get a certain number of rental analysis every year to say, is my rent where the industry is and what does that look like?
Okay.
So it's a pretty neat program.
I can make a joke about a portal. I don't think anybody wants any more portals in their life, but okay. you got a portal for your portals nowadays. We got a portal. Everybody's selling portals.
Another password.
I don't want another password. I don't want another link. Just tell me what I need to do.
Side funny story. We have a team member who uses LastPass, which is your password database.
Okay.
And couldn't remember their password for LastPass. And they couldn't get into the one.
The world we live in. Now I get emails from the bank and the title company where I can't read the email. I have to log in. I have to log in to the portal to see the email.
Fun.
Okay. I'm digressing here, but you can tell that TJ and I have a lot of fun with this. We keep it real. So you got a program that, So is there a website where people could go to learn?
Yes. So if you go to rentwell.com / that's the one that leans forward. It's by the shift key on the right.
Yes, it is.
And then it's OBP as in owner benefits package.
OBP.
Rentwell.com / OBP. All the information's out there. We got some fun little videos that explain it. We also have the pet guarantee. Now that's new this year,
Mm-hmm.
which is we run pet placement through a process called pet screening, and they get certain paw ratings, 1 to 5 paw. They call it the FIDO score. And based on that, we offer up to $2,000 in pet damage guarantee. There's some, limitations around that, but
Yep.
if there are pet damages, we would cover up to 2,000. And then we have an extension to that where for an extra $15 a month, we would make that 4,000 in total.
Okay.
So those are the 2 guaranteed programs we have going on. And then our third, which we've kind of always had, which was tenant placement. If we place a qualified tenant based on all the criteria, and
Yep.
for some reason they vacate the property, we'll place the next one at.
Yeah. So what TJ means by that is, so we define together who qualifies for a rental property. It's all within the legal bounds of income, credit, criminal. We define that together. That becomes the owner's qualifications. So when an owner can modify their qualifications, don't recommend it, but they have to do it so in writing. And that becomes, just so you know, we're not just putting anybody in the property to collect some money to then have them not work out.
Right.
And then have to do it again and do it again. We would never be in business. It wouldn't work. We started as your local leasing company in 2009, and all we did was tenant placement. So I'd like to spend, I know we're getting near our end of our time here. So you covered the BOSS program. You covered the owner benefits package program. You talked about pet screening. And I think you know the statistic, like what is it? 70% of renters now and probably homeowners have pets. So
exactly. Yeah, there's the number of applicants who are looking for properties that have pets. This is a crazy number, but it's up to 74%. 74% of prospective tenants are looking for that. And pets are the number 2 search criteria, right behind budget. So I know I can afford $1,000 a month.
Okay.
Next thing they're looking for is, does the property allow pets? And real quick, this is why we see an uptick in somebody going online and just paying $100, to have a service animal. Because they're saying, well, you won't allow me to have a pet. I know I can go pay for this. Now you have to let me have the pet, and you cannot charge me rent.
Right.
Of it. So this is another way that we're trying to answer this change in the industry. Is it's a real thing that we have pets. And
can you charge pet rent if they have a service animal?
No.
How does it work? No.
You cannot.
Even with this program. If it's a legitimate service animal, you cannot charge.
Correct.
But this program will determine if it's a legitimate service animal. So if they just did the $100 website, get your card here.
Bingo.
That's what we're flushing out for the landlord.
They actually have, meaning petscreening.com.
Yes.
They have a team of attorneys on staff, like W-2 employees, who look through the applicants that say they're a service or a support animal, and they will actually contact the facility that issued the license.
Got it.
Like, it's a very thorough process.
Got
which is pretty cool.
Nice. Well, we've covered some stuff. Are there any other questions from that list of the bigger pockets?
I think we covered most of them.
Okay.
I enjoyed actually doing an episode. We've been doing this for almost a year now. And this was the first time that we've done one together.
This is cool. We'll do some more. Maybe we can talk about what we're doing on the investing side, on our construction side. But for now, I think we've covered a lot.
Property management fee. I think that'll be a good one to go through.
Yeah. And I'd like to take my workbook and even put it on our website. We do have a lot of calculators on our website that people find value in. So maybe we can get that, demystify this management fee. And I'd love any feedback that anybody else has on management fees. Property management companies, they have to charge when we got started, we didn't want to have to charge for maintenance. And you have to, as a property management company, they all do. Whether you know it or not can be a different thing. We choose the high integrity route and let people know their flat rate or the percentage of what we're going to need to charge on top of the maintenance, unless they're in a Rentwell 1 rate or there's certain criteria met. But I think that's one of the biggest factors. People get a little hung up on, like, what do you mean? I thought I was paying the management fee, and that includes all the coordination and maintenance. It doesn't. It can't. Or we just have to charge more on the management fee, but then that's not fair if you have a more well-maintained property and you followed our guidance from all the podcasts, and we will spell out how to make money in this business. We only know the crockpot way, though. I will share with people. We are the long-term, do it once, do it right, let the portfolio grow over time. And we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Living Well with Rentwell. Any closing remarks, TJ?
No, I appreciate you making time for us. This was fun.
Thank you for listening to Living Well with Rentwell. We hope you loved that episode.
Please be sure to head over to our website at rentwell.com/vision. We're giving away our free program called Vision Through Purposeful Action. If you're a busy person, if you struggle with finding the time and priorities, or if you're experiencing procrastination and overwhelm, this free course will help you with that.
We wish you a blessed day. Thank you for tuning in, and check in later.